Okay, good evening everyone. Today we are going to see, actually I started with profiling ASP.NET applications. Recently we had a problem with one of our applications and there were some performance issues. So I started to do profiling and then I tried some few tools, and at the end I came across two tools that are open source, and maybe I found that those two tools are more useful for debugging than profiling. Obviously, it's useful for profiling. So we'll go through profiling. So when it comes to development, it's always easy. Just we have Visual Studio, and we have our development environment always working as expected. So we usually not to experience any weird problems. So when we go to launching the product, usually it's out of our hands. It's go to the customer. Client, they deploy to their own infrastructure, and we don't have any access to their remote server or anything. So only thing we could get from them, if they reported some issues, like if you can reproduce the problem, it's okay, we can fix it. But in case of performance issues or in some weird use case scenarios which we cannot recreate, and only thing we could apply is like we can ask them for log files. We have the data logs. So we could ask them for log files, or else if we have access to their remote server, it's possible to debug remotely. Like we can remote debug the IAs, but still we using the same network, we cannot do debugging over the internet. So, and also like if you don't have that access facility, still we need somebody at their side to support in real time active communication. We need a log file and we ask them to do something on the configuration or some operations to log some data and dump that object to some log files or data files and send it to us. Again, we need to go through all those long list of logs and just do all those stuffs and analyze and try to find where's the problem is. So it actually needs active communication and channel receiving. And again, profiling. So profilers are important if we are going for optimization stage. During the development, we usually don't worry about optimization. Like we just write algorithms and everything goes fine. And when we go for product launching, then the clients are reporting that yes, their service is not responding as expected. And certainly, if we go with mobile apps, like web apps are full responsive, so they can use that as mobile apps. So yeah, actually during the development phase, still we can use Visual Studio as profilers. And we can still do profiling in our development environment and do some refactoring and do some code analysis and get information. But those are not possible in the production after we launch the product. And it's really hard to simulate the same issue at our development environment because the infrastructure and all the configurations are different. But we can exactly create the same scenario here. So exactly the same thing, and then when we are facing with one file, we are able to recreate what the problem. So again, if you are going for the optimization stage, and we can do any blind optimization, just like okay, you can do it if you are experienced with the system, like we know that we have to look for and all, but that is not going to give you success all the time. So we need some solid input. So if you need solid input, and you have to profile, like whether it's a memory profiler or timing complexity or any function calls like how many times the specific way that it code and all. So you have to do profiling. Profiling means take the data and analyze the data, then you decide which part of the application will be optimized into which way. So that's why you need profiles. Again, if we focus like other technology stacks, they have their own profilers. If you go for .NET profiler, and how does it work is like whether it's a Visual Studio profiler or any commercial one, it's always heavy intensive, like resource intensive. Like it has to inject code into CLR and capture that under information and then give you like all sort of lots of informations. And these are not easy to use in production. It's always going to mess up with the production. It is always difficult to use such kind of heavy tools with production because it affects the performance as well. So again, if you use those kind of tools, again we have log files and data and graphs and all, we have to dig deeper and try to find what the actual workflow it is. So again, of course you can use it, aliases by Redgate. These are the famous .NET profiles available. We can really do a lot of work with that. If you are doing some code refactoring at the development space or like after launching nodes, it's fine to do as long as we have control over the deployment. Like report aliases, specific and debugging, possible to do with these tools. But this is not the case what we are dealing with after launching while in real time, like in production code. So again, we can use, if you don't have profilers, of course we can use high performance timers, which are actually applied in sort of assembly language. So it does avoid the overhead of creating the object and all this garbage collection and all. That again, if you actually this comes with when you are dealing with sort of nanosecond sort of that level. So there you cannot have this overhead of having the object creation and create the stock codes and delete it. So those takes time. So if you're dealing with such kind of algorithms to work in nanoseconds sort of level, then you have to go for this high performance timers and then look at clock speed and just do some calculation in that. That's what usually they do in like high speed applications. So we don't worry about that. So again, these are commercial tools available. So again, we need to go for license, and these doesn't give all the features available for trial versions. So I came across two free open source softwares, which is Mini Profiler by Stack Overflow guys, and other one is Claims. So Mini Profilers again is a profiling option. It just gives function execution time and the sequence of timeline, and also it does profile the SQL queries as well. And again, the Claims, I came across Claims is it's not a profiler tool only. It is a full diagnostic platform. Like it has lots of features, and it's possible to extend these features. So it's supported by Microsoft right now. Previously, it was supported by Redgate. So Claims is the current trend is like Claims is well recognized. I think it's supported by Microsoft. That means they already take into account that this is a good future, and it gives us real-time information about what is happening in the web server. So what idea was, I think back in 2011 during the open source festival, and two guys came up with the idea that what if we have a tool which look like, but we have the fiber, like the client-side developer console, the same setup, same kind of feature for display the server information, what is happening at the server. So like whatever the request comes and all sort of information, whatever happens in the IAS server, or possible to extend to any other web stack. They came up with the idea to display that information at the client browser, whatever happens with the server side. So you don't really need to go to the IAS server and look at data log, or you don't need to access kind of remote access to get information what is happening or like that. So actually, initially they developed Claims with for MVC, ASP.NET and of course based on ASP.NET. So it naturally comes for ASP.NET platforms as well. So it gives lots of features like visual profiling, the time profiles, and what is happening in the data access layer, and how this MVC rendering and routing works and all lot of things, and we'll look into that. And if you look at the Claims architecture, it's basically based on the HTTP handler and HTTP modules. So you just create a HTTP handler at our application side, and it's just capture all the requests coming into the server and all the operations, whatever the commands we give to whatever things we define to capture, aggregate the data based on our configurations. So they are simply based on the HTTP handler and the modules. And of course, if you have to use the Claims, and we have to register that handler in the config file, we'll just look into that. And then very easy to use. It's usually like NuGet package and it's web native and very fast, and it has a high security, because if you are exposing what's happening at the server side of the client, it's obviously a security issue. So it has security module as well. And we'll look into that in detail. And that's it. And we'll go for demo. So the demo, I am starting with a simple MVC application. this MVC application, MVC5 and Entity Framework 6. So it has a list of movie details, nothing much inside. Let's run. So just run to that default. By default, claims is off, and sorry. Here you can see, switch it off. Actually, first time it will not be on by default, so you have to. Before that, we'll install. This is a simple MVC application, and just you have to install using the NuGet. There are some dependencies to be installed. So actually, I have already installed it. So Clims comes with it's a modular architecture. It's easy to extendable and it's open source anyway. So they actually made it quite nice in a way that anybody can extend it in whatever they want, or you can extend this tool to any other web stack, like whether PHP or Python or any other stack. So we'll just look for this, like Clims core. The basic one is the Clims core. Just install that. It's already installed, and that is enough for most of the basic thing. And if you are doing web forms, you have to install web forms. Clims.webforms. You have to install it if you are doing web form applications. So I did not install for this one. And then if you are doing any database related or entity framework, if you are using entity framework, and you have to correctly choose which entity framework you are using it, whether EF6 or 5 or 3. So in this case, I'm using 6, so you have to use the correct version. And again, the MVC also same. You have to use the MVC. Yeah, you have to use the ASP.NET one. So you have to install these basic one, and there are many extensions which if you need any other module of your ASP.NET applications, you can use it. So just install it, and once you installed it, and it will change the web config. So if you see that it will register a handler, Clims handler here, and Clims modules as well. It will just register these two modules, and here it will add a section here, Clims section. And default runtime policy is on, which means we enabled it. And this is the resource locations, like your base URL plus clims.ext, and these things we can change later for security purpose, and we'll look into that later. This is the basic configuration once you install Clims. And okay, so we'll run this application. And by default, it is enabled anyway. So if you want to do any changes, and just go to the base URL and clims.txt. Okay, this is the Clims cookie page. So here you can select whether you want to on or off the Clims. So just you can, now it's on. If you want to make it off, just off. Then it will not capture anything. It will set the cookie that not to do anything. So it will not capture anything at your server side. And again, you can go for like fine level, what kind of information you want. It logs by default all this information, it happens. So if you have any specific requirement, you want to check the root how routing works, or how that view resolution works, and or like SQL, that data access layer or trace works. So it's up to you to select which module you want to trace, or you want to debug, or you want to do profiling, or whatever it is. And again, it has some runtime policies. We'll come to that later. Whether you had to run locally or you had to run remote, and you had to X policy and URI policy and status code, a lot of things there. That's for the security purpose. And we will look into that later. and by default it is enabled everything. So now we make it enable, then just go to this code. So once you enabled it, so as usually it works, you can see that overlay here at the bottom. It gives you some heads-up display that what happened at the client side and what happened at the server side. And if you have any AJAX calls, and it will give you that information as well. So here you can see that it's a loading time at the client side. So what happened at the client side, it has 4 milliseconds of wiring time. It's the time taken from you started the request until it reached the server. So it's a local server, just very fast, it's 4 milliseconds. And what happened at the server side, how long the server took to give you response. And the blue line is the client side. It's the time taken from receive the response from the client, a server to client, and then rendering. So this is the timeline as it happened. And again, you can go to the server side. What happened at the server side is the simple MVC applications. So what happened at the controller, how much time it spent, and how that rendering the views or resolution, and how rendering create a response. So I am not going to detail into the MVC area. I will explain as it goes, but just give you some basic information. If you are doing web forms, I will show you what happens bona fide application. So again, if you are doing web forms, again that client side is same. It's a wiring time and the server time and the client rendering time. And we can see, run two applications at the same time. Use this one. So I'll just enable glimpse here. Oops, IE8 issues. So it doesn't work well with IE8. So just web applications, now Glimpse is on. So as again, this is same as other application. If you see here, what is that? Here. So you can see that page load cycle, as we don't that normal page load cycle, how each stage take time, how pre-init and init load time, how much time it taken to those. You can go into deeper by each level, what happened at each level. So this is for the web forms. So we don't look into that now. Okay, so here we have rendering logic. And again, so these are the heads-up display, like just give you some basic information. If you want to know more about what's happening in your tablet, you click that G icon. So here you have a lot of things inside. So what is happening, what is the data at cache, like HTTP runtime cache object, what's the object stage, and you want to see any information, anything you want to check. And configuration, again, it's like what is your web config. So all the configuration you made at the remote side. So just enable it, and you can just get this all the information here at the client side, all the web configuration informations. And again, that usually we have problem with what is the environment client is using. Like we always ask, okay, what is your operating system and what is your server details and all. So it gives all the information about the remote server which you are running your applications. So all the information are here. Like you don't need to just ask them what is the version and what is the configuration of your thing, what's the time. You always have the problem with the time. So running the different locations and we don't know which time zone it is running. So we always have problem. Just get it. Everything is here. So all the information are available about the environment. And again, execution. So it's sequence of how that controller and views are get resolved, and all the execution sequence, how it is worked, and always that green line here, it is the one that actually executed. Like it goes through, actually it's a good thing to learn if you are doing MVC applications, and if you are learning MVC, and as usual that Visual Studio does everything for us automatically. It's just basically the knowledge killer. It doesn't let us learn because it just generates everything automatically, especially for MVC applications. A lot of things are generated, it just works automatically. So we don't know how this view resolution and routing works and all, it just works for us. So if you want to learn how it is working, and from the base how it is resolving all this routing map and view resolution and all, this is a very good tool to use it. You can see that how it is working. You just go to that controller and index, and those the base class level function, it just check that one, this one, and then come to that index method. And again, you can go for the routing, and we have this route config in the MVC application, so we can set many routing map. So here again, which routing map actually got resolved this particular request, and other existing routing map also it's available, so you can still learn this, how routing works. And again, that view resolution, again we have views. So we just created a data model, and that model, the MVC creates the controller and views for that particular model. Then again, here you can see that how it looks for the view resolution. So which view to render. We can have different views, and how, actually it's a very simple application. You just have a basic view. If you have some kind of inheritance like that view, this view and all, you can see that how it gets resolved. You can see here actually, it goes to that base and go every level you define and go and check whether cache is true and this one is found or not, false, 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 and come to this point, yeah, I found it, then this render it. So this is a sequence as it happened at the server side, how the ASP.NET MVC framework resolved your view. And again, there are many other information, many other tabs to go. I am not going to go through each one of them, and some metadata and execution and the request. This is similar to what we have in the developer console in the client side, the Firebug. What are the requests we made and what is available is similar to that. And again, routing, then SQL and model binding. If you have any model binding, it will be active. And if you have any SQL, it will be active. So now I'm still at the front page. So I'm just going to go detailed page. That time we will query the entity framework. It actually make SQL query. So I'm not doing any SQL query, but I'm just using that entity framework. Here, the movies controller. It just use the model is this very simple model that has few properties, and just this. And here we have entity framework database context, and that just everything is entity framework based. I'm not doing any actual SQL query using this entity framework. So this helps. So again, I go to the list here. So just list out what are the movies available and just display this. And if you look at now, again here, you can see again some more information like how many database queries we made for this page request, and how many connection we made, established, and how many queries we made. So again, the total time taken for that establish the connection, and total time for the total queries, and all these informations are here, just heads up display, and you can go into detail inside, and you can see that these are the SQL queries we made. We didn't write any SQL syntax or anything, but just simply entity framework. We used entity framework, but actually what is the query we made to the database. And actually these are some additional things happens for entity framework. It happens only first time, that migration, database migration table and all. So you can just look at the last one. This is the actual query we made for getting the movie list, and total time for that taken for that particular SQL query. And all these informations are here, and just you can see the summary here, total number of connection. And actually I just made some few dummy connection and dummy queries just to show how it is working. So it just capture all the queries and all the connection we made for the particular page request, and all the details are here for you just to analyze and just to see like which query actually took more time or how you can optimize it and all. You can study that level as well. Again, that this is one thing. So, and other thing we used to have, like if you have log4net data logs or trace files. So if you want to debug anything like any object state sort of information, if you want, always we ask the user to send the log file, or we have access to that remote server and get the log files, and so enable the log files and get the log files or the trace files. So here I'm just going to add few trace. Let's say like I go to this level, the details page, add simply add system trace one. So just add, because by default I enable to capture the trace information. So just adding this thing here. And if you want to add any, by default the session variables are not available. Session tab is disabled by default unless you use any session variable. So if you save any data to this particular session, just just add that key value pair here, just save it to the session variable, then run. Just drop it. And this time, I just go to that, add it to the detail control, so it's actually, I added inside the details. So, sorry. Yes. Here, just go to that detail page. So here, just go to that panel again. So you can see that session is now available. So whatever the session variable we enabled, it's available here, and also the trace. So as it is, like we don't need to get the trace file anymore. Just with the context sensitive and which gives the error or warning or whatever it is. Just we can get the trace information at the browser site. We don't need to have any trace log files to get it or dump the object and get all these analyses. And the good thing is, if you just enable the trace files and just, if you go to the remote server, like it logs all the trace codes. And this here, it's happening like, it only that particular page, what are the trace files, captured for this particular page request. It's not like a big trace files and we have to go through particular keywords and search through that and try to find it out. It's just give that clear snapshot of what happened for this particular page request and just give the information at when it happened and what it happened and all sort of information it just gives. Yep. No, that particular session, that particular user session. It's not for everyone. Yeah, actually, it's it logs. No, actually, it keeps all the information for the particular page request. I'll come to that that scenario again. It actually logs all the data come to that particular page request. So even though because it's not available for common user, it's just for the developer. So it's not going to be available for the end user. So it's for us like developers. So we can actually monitor what happens for the particular page request. Like if we make 40 requests at the same time, you can get all these 40 requests here, the same panel. So this is quite cool. I'll demo that. That's an important feature of this one. I'll demo it later, how it works. And so here, again, this application doesn't make any AJAX request, so I just made a dummy request. Just get movie count in that page, detail page. So I just put the AJAX link, so we'll see how it is. Now it's 0. Like AJAX is 0. There's no count how many AJAX calls we made for this particular page, and just call this is the AJAX call and just keep calling. So you can see it's getting updated. So just see like how many calls we made, and just get the information here, and you can just see like each AJAX call and how much time it taken to execute that one. And you can actually go into detail here, like AJAX tab here, and you can see that particular URL, and if you want to see more detail about that, and go to inspect, and then once you select that particular URL and all the data is related to that particular URL, you can see that URL here, it got changed. So this now we selected that particular URL, then just information about that URL here. Then just go back and just reset it. So it's about AJAX request, and again the history. It actually logs all the request comes to that server side, not really from this particular client. So actually, you can see that the client is this one, the Chrome 47, this particular client. And if you have multiple clients calling accessing the same server at the same time, you can see all the list of clients here. So we'll demo that one as well. So let's say like this is an important thing. Like we always have problem. Like it always works for us at the developer PC or developer environment. It works for us. And even like as a developer, we don't make mistake. We don't know how to not to make mistake or not to mess up the systems. But user is not. So they say, okay, I do this one, I use it in this way, and then this happens. And we don't understand that terminology, and just we always ask for these log files and all sort of information from the customer. So using this tool, what we could do, ask them like just enable the glimpse at their side and let them do their work, and we can monitor it from our side. So we'll do that. So now the current client is Chrome. So I will open the same application from the Internet Explorer. And so now we have another one here. Yeah, so actually it comes from IE. The name doesn't give the right word. So actually I'm accessing from here. So whatever happens, because the request goes to the server side. So we are capturing the information from the server. So we don't, the server, what we get here, like how many clients from which client we get this information, how many counts for the particular URL or count from to the server. So yes, you want to debug it, just go to that, just select this one. Sorry. Yeah, it's working. Here also it should work. So like it comes from the IE, then you can select here. So let's say like it's actually from that remote user who are using the system. So we know that yes, this is their. If you know that this is their request, and select that tab, and if just focus on that particular problematic URL. Let's say like if they have problem with accessing this detail tab, and just select and inspect this one. Then go to any tab you want and just keep monitoring. So whatever they do, and you will reflect whatever the request they make to the server, and you can get those information, whether the trace, the debug trace or model binding or view resolution or whatever it is, you will get here. So you can just monitor it as they are doing their work, and you can just capture, you can get whatever information you want. Like, because as a developer, we always want to know the internals, like what's happening inside. If there's some weird problems we don't know, we always focus on data, the internal data. So that gives more clear picture about the problem. Whenever we debug, we always just put the breakpoint and check the data structure and particular variable as we have experienced, and just go and check particular things. So that's what we all think in our mind. So this internal data gives information, so we can debug it. It's even useful if you are developing that full responsive website, which can be a mobile app as well as a web app. So we cannot enable this kind of glimpse in the mobile. It's a very small space. So like if you have problem, if you're developing the responsive website and it has problem in the mobile version, then again it's a good tool. Like okay, you can debug in the mobile app while you are monitoring the data in the desktop app. Whatever happens or whatever the request you make from the mobile app, and you can see the whole information in the desktop app. So that's a good way to debug it. Okay. These are the basic things. This is a basic usage of glimpse, and we'll go for advanced usage. And okay, as we are so again this very heads-up display and this normal display which I show you, and yeah, again that when it comes to profiling, we need a timing sequence, like how the function got executed and how much time taken for each functions. And let's say like we are loading that web forms and we have ASP.NET page cycle, and we want to know that how much time taken for each stage of the page cycle, or like MVC application, like how each database connection took time and what are the sequence and all. That's where we have this timeline tab. So it gives you information about, you can filter it, which is commanded is there, is nicely colored it, and this is the sequence of course. And you can see like how much time taken for each stage, like database connections or action view resolution or view rendering and all sort of part. How much time taken for each stage of that page cycle. So you can actually filter it and all. By default, it gives everything. Like if you enable SQL ADO connection, and MVC gives all this how much time you spend at the controller side and how much time you spend at the view side, and how much time it taken for the establish the connection. If you have a remote connection, database server and all, how much time for the connection and how much time taken for execute a particular command. So all the information, detailed informations are here, and these comes by default. And so this not enough for us if we are going to profile our own logic, because if you look at okay, I will come to that later. So here, so it just gives the time frame. Like okay, you can see that how much time taken the controller side. So yes, you can go to detail and you can zoom into that particular area if you are more interested in debugging. Want to know that more about this particular area. Just zoom it, that sliders, and just focus on that area. What has happened and how many milliseconds to execute this particular area of that application, and just it gives basic information about what has happened in the timing sequence, time space. So it gives some information, but by default, Glimpse doesn't, at the current version 1.8.6, doesn't give you opportunity to capture your own timeline, but it gives actually it's open source, and you can just make changes and you can just capture your own business logic, how much time taken to execute a particular SP or a particular algorithm or whatever it is. You can do it with a little bit of tweak, and the next version will be, this feature will be available by default. It's currently at beta version, and we'll look into that more. So this is a timeline. This gives the timing space of what has happened at the page per request. So the demo, again, it's the open source. So we just look into that particular architecture, how they have implemented it, and it's basically, as I said, it's based on HTTP handler. And here, this basically is not the detailed one. Those yellow tabs are extendable. Like we can actually, we have, if you see the panel here, so these are tabs. All these are tabs. So these tabs, we can create our own tabs for our own data. So as I say, like whenever we debug the applications, we always, when we say some problem which are not visible at the UI side, and some business flow, workflow doesn't work as we expected, or something like that, and we always think that, oh, just go and look at that particular data structure and check that particular variable, or maybe like if we make an API call and we get that return value and save the data structure and use that data structure for other business workflow, and if it is not working as we expected, then we always think that, okay, let's go and look at that particular ID or particular primary key or whatever value we got from the API side. So it always, that's the point we always put the breakpoint and just check, analyze that what's the particular variable. So that's what we do in the development phase. So what if we have the opportunity to see that internal data while production, while at the browser side. So we create our custom tab and we can just lay out whatever the internal workflow information, just display it. At the moment you won't see like, okay, when we call this particular page and there are some workflow data inside which are not visible at the UI side, we don't display everything to you, right? So like we want to see the internals, what was the API return value or API return data structure, and we want to just display it. So we can use this extendable feature tab. We can create our own tab, and again that we come to that policies. It's a security policy because we are exposing all the data to the client side, all the server side information, all the SQL server, database calls, and all sort of information are available. So actually, it's a security brief. So we need to, this by default it is enabled. So claims actually attend the security issues. By default, it is enabled for the local host. It's only for the development purpose. If you want to deploy it for that remote production, so what you have to do is just go to change the configurations again. Claims here. So we want to remove that local policy. So by default, local policy is enabled. That means it's available only for the local host, the development environment. So if you want to access while it is remote, then you just disable it. So automatically just create this runtime policy for us, just copy paste. And if you want to disable any other features like AJAX request, and if you want to add any URL policies like let's say like you can set the particular URL like wildcard, like you want the admin level, then some URL pattern. So you can set that policy like only for these particular URLs enable claims, otherwise not to enable. Or like particular status, like when we make a request and it returns, we have a status code like 200 and 200 something, success, failure. So we can set enable the claims for this particular status code only. So we can do all sort of configuration for us. It's flexible, so just like that. And also you can enable, there are many tabs which are not needed for us all the time, so you can just enable which tabs you want to see, like whether SQL or routing or map session, whatever it is, timeline. So you can just enable, disable, just simply click this one and just copy paste the whole area, then copy paste to that web config. Yeah. So just change here. Under this claims have a section here, so just copy paste. You can do, this is the one level of security or like configurations, and when it comes to security, this is the security runtime policy. So just enable. So I just enabled it for. Policy also I don't need this. So I just disabled local policy. So that make it enable for the remote access, a remote server as well. And again that the main switch is here. If you just make it off, it will be off all the time. Again, so this is still not enough for us in terms of security. So claims gives you by default it gives you feature to enable claims based on your business logic. Like particular user has access to claims, like particular developer who has administrative access or developer access to the particular system, he has access to the claims. So you can, by default it creates a file, claims when you install claims to the NuGet, it creates this particular file. By default it is commented out. So just you enable it. Just enabled it, and here it's actually overwrite what we define in the web config file. So here by default, if it is there, if you can just put any kind of your business logic, or you can define which user has access to this particular claims instance. So here you can just make your own logic and define whether runtime policy on or off. So it gives more power and more control over security who can see that claims data or who can enable the claims data. So once if it is not enabled, it will not aggregate or it will not trace any information at your server side. So it gives you a total security over applications who can see this claims data. So it's just here at this point you can just write your own business logic and just say who has access to particular instance. So this is how the security works, and even you can do your own security policy. Just implement this runtime policy. So you can still go much deeper into the security area. You can implement your own security concept in terms of claims works. So this is a security area, and there are a few things to do. Okay, so we see that how it works on multiple clients. So we can access this one. The other things like okay, we need to, as I said, the timeline. So we want to look into our own timeline. So again, by default, claims doesn't give you option to capture our business logic timeline. So we had to do a little bit of it gives interface to do it. So you can do it here. You have to. It gives you here. I cannot see that tab. Not here. It gives you one interface, timeline interface, timeline message. So actually the claims works like it has a message queue, timeline message strategy solver, and what we have to do is just implement this iTimeline. Can you see it? Sorry. Okay. So we can change this. Teams. Sorry. Light. Okay. Here, just iTimeline, just implement this particular interface and just say, okay, this is my, because here we saw that database connection and views and controller works, and this my own logic. I am going to provide my own logic. So just name what are the category name. So it's my cursor and what kind of color you want to display in the timeline. Just define and just implement this particular variable and set just default is fine. Then just implement it, and again just important part is like you need to create this particular message, construct this particular message with your particular timestamp or like stopwatch just calculated, and just push to this particular message broker. It's a timeline claims gives by claims extensible this one. It gives you this message timeline strategy and the message broker, and just have to insert this particular timing message sequence to that instance. So it will just capture it. So I just made it a helper class just to capture it. So we can just use it in a nice way. Just here we have message broker and publish that particular timeline message. So this is the important steps. And you get the broker, message broker, and just get this one. Claims configuration, get the message broker, and get the timer strategy. And just use these two variables, and just this class is, there are many implementations for this purpose, so we can just follow any of those and just implement this class, and then go to our controller. Let's say like I go to detail tab. So here, let's say like I want to capture what is happening inside. So based on that class which I created, so just claims timeline. So this is the class I created. Then just say capture, just step it. So just because that was the disposable object, just make it easy to use. Then just wrap your code with this particular. So then you can just do that, and you can just do something funny here. Again, just do something funny here, just to see that how the sequence works. Then, oops. Then do something again. Okay. So then we run. So we actually define that color as something and category as something. Here we define that movie store category and the color is right, and just run the application. And this is the detail tab. So this is running. And okay, here we have a timeline. So let's go to that page. The detail page. So that's where I captured that personal timeline. So here you can see that my movie store and the red light, and you can see that we had a step A, took this much of time, and internally we have a step A.1, it took this much of time. So we can just trace our own logic in this way. Like we can easily see that in which sequence it happened, like when it happened during the page init or page load section, and which method and which part of the application. We can just do that proper timing sequence. We can just see visually that, okay, this is causing the problem. So this is more useful when compared to Visual Studio or any other program profiler, which gives a lot of information. And this one gives us clear picture that where we are stuck. So we can do this one. Actually, this is available by default in the coming next version, like version 2.0. Now it's in the beta. So you can do this yourself. That's very easy to do. And again, as I told, like as a developers, we always worried about internal data. So I'll show you how to create that one tab for our internal data. So in order to create that internal data, you need to extend that particular tab extension. So let's say we create our own tab. And we define what are going to display. So just it comes under ASP.NET, that claims.asp.extensibility and code.extensibility, and just create our own tab. Just class, and let's select movie tab, and just actually this extension, it gives lots of ways to do the tab. You can customize the appearance and all, and it has the iTab, and iTab context and layout and everything. So you can really do nice display. I just go with the basic abstract class ASP.NET tab, and just implement this particular class. And there are two methods, like what is the name of the tab. So just the header. And here we need to set what is the actual data we are going to display. Let's say like it's some data what we get from third-party API, and we want to see what is the internal data. So you want to set it. So here just create just a simple class. Movie. So just set it, and here we are going to just return this particular movie instance. Okay. Then we're not going to display this one. Just let's say like when we go to that detail view again. So here we have, and just set it here. So let's just say like we are dealing with this particular movie detail and just set it movie, is that class name? Yes, movie current. Just movie current movie is this movie instance. Okay, then just run it. So here we have movie config. So just to create a tab.
How do we get information from services? If our web application is connected to a WCF service or web API,
Yeah.
how do we get the information from that data?
Actually, at this version doesn't support directly all this web. If you are calling that web API from inside your applications, it doesn't capture all the information. But you can actually debug your web API if you have control over web API server. It doesn't give you any interface, but still you can use the claims to debug it at the web API server. But you cannot really capture everything at the application side.
On the web application, you
cannot capture.
If you directly call the web API,
Yeah, you can just debug it, and again, you can just convert the data and just display it. You can do it, but current version doesn't support to directly capture that API calls. So here, just run this application. It's running now. So here, there's that movie. Details. Claims panel. Movie here. I created new tab. It's a movie information. So the current movie information, whatever I set to the current context, it's available here. So like the internal information for the particular stage of the web page, so we can get here. And actually, it has a nice layout, and you can just customize any kind of layout here. So let's say like instead of this one, I return this one. So this one, let's say like tourist. Detail again. So now I actually that current context data I changed to list of movies. So it's actually changed the layout for like list all the information. What are the movie list in the database? But actually this layout you can control using that interfaces like what we see here, like this one. So different layout. So you can do this kind of layout using those interfaces. You can customize any kind of even like this one also based on that layout control. So you can define your own layout to display your own business or workflow data. And that's it. And create a timeline browser. And again, as so far I am using the entity framework. So like currently in our systems, we don't use entity framework. So if you have to capture that SQL code, then what you can do is if you are using that simple SQL connection object, the claims will not capture those codes. So if you want to use claims for this kind of scenario, what you have to do is if you are using that ADO data context like linked to SQL or any other data context, and what you have to do is like when you define this app context, data context, here usually we pass the database connection. So instead of passing the database connection, and the claims gives you the database connection object, and just replace that existing database connection with the claims database connection, then it will capture normal SQL data. You don't really need to use entity framework. So if you want to use the claims for the existing systems, just replace it with that CLIMS database connection. Or else, if you have some problem using it, so if you have pure SQL connection or any other data client, what you got to do is you can just use this database provider factory. It's standard .NET one. So instead of directly calling that SQL connection object or command object, you just access through that factory object. Like create this DB provider factory and create the factory and just get the command and connection through the factory. Then CLIMS will capture your database calls as well. So that's the only thing you need to do if you are using that standard database ADO data context instead of entity framework. So otherwise, other than that, everything is same as it is. Only thing you need to change is this one. And also like CLIMS also gives the database provider factory, CLIMS database provider factory, and you can use that one as well if you want it. And CLIMS again, open source. I checked it and it has whatever that ASP.NET related .NET related plugins or third-party libraries we are using, the famous ones. They have plugin for CLIMS as well, like Log4net or sort of thing like everything NVIS related and other third-party JSON libraries and all. Everything they have the full ecosystem, and we can just use it. Like whatever the information whatever the libraries we are using at the server side, if you want to get information about those, but related to that, those libraries also we can get to the place. Just you have to enable it, install it, and just enable it. So it just depends on us. What do we want to expose to the client side, and what kind of data we want to aggregate at the server side and expose it. And again, if you are using Azure deployment, this one doesn't give you any memory profile or something. So again, if you are using Azure development and Azure, it has that application insights, Service Studio plugin. So it gives you full analytics about your application, how it is doing, all the memory issues and all the performance issues, all the requests, full-fledged dashboard. So they also provide an extension for the CLIMS. So if you deploy your application to the Azure deployment and then enable that application insight feature with your app, then whatever information you get at the Azure, you will get at the CLIMS side as well. All that real-time information about your application, how it is performing, or how it is doing, how it is doing. All sort of information is available at the CLIMS side. That's it. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. No, whatever you require. Core is bare minimum. That particular project. Or else what you can do is you can just create a utility class sort of things or a separate project. So you just install all the CLIMS component there and just create a helper class, then just expose to other project. So at this moment, actually, I also had the same problem. So I had installed that CLIMS.code to that SQL project and just to capture that, implement this timeline message. So I also felt that is duplication. So what you can do is just create a common project or class library, install all these CLIMS libraries, what you need, and do all the information, just expose in a way we want to use it. Just use that way. But basically, at the end, we need to install it to the web project. So that's a minimum. We need to come to that point. We need to do the configurations. That's a one point. And if you want to do it with other projects, what you can do is you can create a helper class based on that minimum, except this web-related ASP.NET, that's web-related components, or like if you need a core and ADO and any other related Log4net or trace related information, install those particular plugins and just create a helper class and use it throughout your project. So that's the best way to do it. It's not the database, it's the HTTP handler, which actually the CLIMS handler we are registering, that capture all the information.
It's not stored, it's in memory.
It is in memory.
Yeah,
for viewing. It actually keeps history. It's not only one instance, it actually keeps history of data, particular session. I'm not sure about how long it will keep.
So if you were to restart the application code, you will lose
yeah, if you restart IIS, and then it will lose all the data. It actually keeps in the memory. You can see the history of current session or current running time. There's no storage. Yeah, you could just, if you don't have access, when you just write this URL, it will give error, like, not found error. So only that particular user, if you have user access only, it will give. Otherwise, it's like wrong URL you are typing. And actually, it's not supposed to be claims. Actually, you can just change the name, any name. You won't just look at the web config file. By default, it keeps the claims, and just you can just change it any name you want. So here, yes, claims ext. So just here and some other place. Here, that claim registration. Here the path. So just change the path to any name. So any random name. So no one going to know what's the name, but still the name is, somebody can guess it. So that's why they have the security policy. So you can implement own security. So just change the name. By default it's claims, but it's not needed. It can be any name or any app name or any other things. Any other questions?